We'll put me there for now. Let's make me bigger. Hello, me. Right, so if you're watching this on YouTube, we're going through the 1.3.3 patch notes that is released on the 1st of March as for the mid-season update for Diablo 4. Let's have a gander, shall we? Gameplay updates. Vampiric powers. Developers note: select vampiric powers from Season of Blood have returned with some tweaks to make their power level fit into Season of the Construct. These powers will be available as legendary aspects in all world tiers and in both the Eternal and Seasonal realms. I still think they should have made it a system rather than just legendary aspects. We saw these pretty much throughout the campfire chat. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can watch the separate video that I'll be uploading where we go into detail about those. So I'm going to skip over it. Balance updates. Unique items. Ring of Starless Skies now shows a buff on the bar while active. Hey! Showing basic things like buffs. Huzzah! Penitent Greaves. Damage to chilled enemies increased from 7 to 10% to 12 to 15%. Sure. I suspect, I feel like it probably needs a bigger buff than that. It's kind of a meme. Like, most people get it just because they like having the cold effect trailing behind them. It's basically a cosmetic. Tacits of the Dawning Sky. Maximum resistance increased from 6 to 10% to 8 to 12. Sure. Mother's Embrace. Resource refund increased from 20 to 40 to 30 to 50. That's kind of big. I already thought Mother's Embrace was quite strong. Like, on the right build, it helped sustain a lot, but fair enough. Glad to see it. I think resource management in Diablo 4 is kind of icky anyway, because you have these really long cooldowns and resource management. And I think when you have both, it can lead to the game feeling not great, especially when you have to use like some kind of generator to generate your resource in the first place, like a dedicated one. Because all it means is that you're spamming a really weak attack for 5 seconds so you can then do a big attack. And it's not until you're fully geared up that you can abandon it and like you've found other ways to get around it. So it makes early game feel a bit, to be honest. Legendary aspects of Inner Calm. Damage maximum increased from 30 to 40%. Cool. Retribution. Stun chance increased from 8 to 10%. Damage to stunned enemies increased from 10 to 20 to 15 to 25. I'm trying to remember which one that is, because I think I remember using this one because it used to be a lot stronger and then they nerfed it into the ground and I was like, oh, and stopped using it. So I can see why they buffed it if it's the one I think it is. Amount of life healed needed for resource gain changed from 25 to 20. Sure. Bash. Damage increased by 10%. As in 10% of the number that was already there, or they added 10% onto it? Fury gain increased from 13 to 15. Sure, it's still a generator. Still going to feel horrible though. Additional Fury increased from 3 to 5 on Battle Bash. Additional Fury with 2-handed weapons increased from 4 to 10. Okay, that's a bit more of a substantial change. I did say in the campfire chat that outside of actually completely redoing the skill system, which I do think they need to do, they would have to just phenomenally buff generators. So Battle Bash could be okay. Frenzy. Damage increased by 10%. I feel like Frenzy should have been a core skill for a start, but sure. Flay. Damage increased by 10%. Fury gain increased from 13 to 15. Enhanced Flay. Vulnerable duration increased from 2 to 3 seconds. Strategic Ground Stomp. Ultimate cooldown reduction increased from 1 to 2 seconds. Sure. Fortify amount increased from 15 to 20. Sure. I already thought Fortify was plenty strong on the bar, but whatevs. And I don't even use Iron Skin. Prime. Call of the Ancients. Bonus damage increased from 10 to 20%. Sure. Endless Fury. Fury gained increased from 7:14 to 21 and 21 to 10, 20, and 30. Okay, that could be substantial. Paragon. Executioner Glyph. Previously, while wielding a polearm, you deal 10% more damage to healthy or injured enemies. While wielding a polearm, you do 10% increased damage. That's a lot better. That is a lot better. One of the weak things about the polearm was unless you were basically doing a one-shot build, you didn't care if you did more damage to healthy enemies because that was only the first hit. So unless your hit was intended to one-shot like my bonk build, my deathblow build, that literally one-shot every boss in the game, where I used a polearm as one of my items specifically for that, that makes sense. But that was incredibly niche, so hardly anyone used polearms. Aspect of the Iron Warrior. Damage reduction increased from 18 to 28 to 25 to 35. Damn. Unique items. Gore's Devastating Grips. We already saw that one. I don't think the issue was with Whirlwind personally, although they did kind of overly nerf the grips as an item, but I don't think fixing this is going to fix the issue. It's just a band-aid or a plug. It's like, yay, if you get this very specific unique, then Whirlwind might be on par with all the other stupidly strong builds. Whirlwind used to be so strong. Whirlwind as a skill in any action RPG is always strong because you can move and do damage all at the same time. Druid skills. Earth Spike. Spirit generation increased from 13 to 16. Damage increased by 10%. Sure. Enhanced Earth Spike. Chance to stun increased from 10 to 15%. Fierce Earth Spike. Fortify amount increased from 8 to 12% of maximum life. Wind Shear. Spirit generation increased from 14 to 16. Damage increased by 10. Wild Wind Shear. Additional spirit per enemy hit increased from 3 to 4. Claw. Spirit generation increased from 12 to 15. And damage increased by 15. That would be nice. Fierce Claw. Damage increased by 30%. That will also be nice. I wanted to like Claw, but it didn't feel that much more different from Maul, and I think I would usually pick Maul over it. Spirit generation increased from 17 to 20. Damage increased by 10. May potentially still do so based on that. Enhanced Maul. Fortify amount increased from 3 to 5% of maximum life. Wild Maul. Knockdown duration increased from 1.5 to 2 seconds. Wolves, Poison Creepers, and Ravens have had a damage buff, which is nice. Passive Quick Shift. Damage bonus increased from 5, 10, 15 to 7, 14, 21. Cool. Bestial Rampage. Damage bonus while in werebear form increased from 30 to 50%. Sure. You do already see it. I think the problem with werebear and werewolf is werebear is like disproportionately just better in a lot of circumstances, unless you're playing like the Lightning Shred build. You tend to lean towards werebear because it's just immensely tankier and has more damage, where I think werewolf at the sacrifice, the archetype of werewolf should be you are more glass cannon, I feel like. Their sign strength, damage, and overpower damage bonuses increased from 25 to 30. Perfect Storm. Damage bonus increased from 15 to 20%. Okay. Seismic Shift. Earth Spike launches spikes in a line and has a 2 to 1 second cooldown. If it didn't have that cooldown, it'd be great. New Earth Spike gains 35 to 50% bonus damage, launches spikes in a line, and has a 2 to 1. No, get rid of the cooldown. Just get rid of the cooldown. Just get rid of it. Stop. Behave yourselves. Nay. They love cooldowns in this game. I feel like they use them as a crutch a little bit too much. Unique items. Storm's Companion. We already saw that. It's now going to be the only item people use with wolves. Congrats. Necromancer. Book of the Dead. Okay. Buffs to all the basics in terms of life and damage. Sure. Blood Surge. Damage bonus per enemy drained reduced from 10 times multiplicative to 5% multiplicative. Nova damage increased by 40%, which will be additive, I assume. In fact, no, that's just going to be they've increased the number itself by 40. The goals of this change are to reduce the opportunity cost of using Blood Surge against fewer numbers of enemies, as well as increasing its overall power, even in scenarios of hitting multiple enemies. I don't play a lot of Necro at the moment, so I'm not sure how to really feel about that, to be honest. I'm sure the Necro players will sound off in the comments. Supernatural Blood Surge. Damage bonus increased from 20% to 30%. Sever. Outgoing damage increased by 6.5. Returning damage increased by 20%. Enhanced Sever. Damage increased from 40 to 75% of Sever's initial damage. Okay. Vulnerable duration increased from 2 to 3 seconds. Blight impact damage increased by 33.3%. Damage over time increased by 10.5%. Mobilized duration increased from 1.5 to 2.5. Supernatural blight damage bonus increased from 15 to 20%. Corpse explosion damage increased by 21.5%. Did that really need buffing? Like, isn't that in most builds to some degree? I don't play a lot on Echo, so maybe it's not, but I do remember, at least in like Season 1 and Season 0, that Corpse Explosion was hella strong. Damage bonus increased from 8 to 10% on Plagued Corpse Explosion. Enhanced Bone Prison. Previous enemies inside Bone Prison are vulnerable. New enemies inside Bone Prison, when cast, are made vulnerable for 8 seconds. Huh. Okay, that makes sense. I like that. Blood Wave. Damage increased by 25%. That was needed, because ultimates in Diablo 4 don't feel that ultimately. Passives, Death's Approach, name change, we already saw that one. Spiked Armor, we saw that one. I agree, it's thematic, it makes sense. Death's Embrace, damage reduction from close enemies increased from 369 to 4812. Hellbent Commander, damage bonus increased from 10 20 30 to 15 30 45. Crippling Darkness. Previous Lucky Hit Darkness skills have up to a 15% chance to stun for 1 second. New Lucky Hit Darkness skills have up to 15% chance to stun enemies for 1, 2, 3 seconds and deal 0.2 damage, shadow damage to them. Okay. Paragon Cult Leader Legendary Node. Bonus minion damage per 20% attack speed increased from 10 to 15%. Interesting. I do hope in Season 4 necromancers get to live the minion dream, because it does seem like minion builds in general, minion companion, whatever you want to call them, do feel kind of poo-poo for endgame, which is weird considering it's like an entire theme for those classes and you don't really get to live that dream of a theme. Corporeal Glyph, previous additional bonus. You and your minions deal 10% increased physical damage. It's now changed to you and your minions deal 10% increased physical damage, and you gain 1% movement speed for each active minion. Cool. Legendary aspects. Aspect of Hardened Bones. Damage reduction also applies to the player in addition to their minions. Cool. Blood-Bathed aspect. Damage Blood Surge echoes change from 60 to 50% less damage to 10 to 30% less damage. That's pretty big, I suppose. Sorcerer. Skills. Incinerate. Damage increased by 40. I don't think that's going to fix it. The fact that you have to stand still and just to kill things means that you are a sitting duck and it's bad. I think the only way they can make Incinerate good is if they somehow allow you to move while you're doing it, so you're just a mobile flamethrower. Or they do something that gives you a fuckload defense to counter the fact that you're stood there being shot by everything on the planet. Enhanced Incinerate. Damage burn radius increased from 25 to 50. Destructive Incinerate. Enemy damage reduced amount increased from 25 to 30. Used to be more. Greater Incinerate. Mobilized duration increased from 1 to 1.5. Hydra. Damage increased by 15%. Ball lightning damage increased by 10%. Really? Really? I know they nerfed it after the last season because it was broken, but they didn't make it unplayable. But all right, fine. Passives. Icy Veil. Barrier duration increased from 5 to 8%. Snap Freeze Lucky Hit chance increased from 3 to 5%. Soulfire. Previous. After standing still for 1.5 seconds, your pyromancy skills cost 5, 10, 50% less mana. Your pyromancy skills cost 4% less mana and deal 2% increased damage. Double these bonuses after standing still for 2 seconds. That's much better. That's much better. I like that one. Avalanche. Damage increased from 40 to 45%. Shocking Impact. Damage increased by 33%. Paragon. This is going to be interesting because I think the glyphs are kind of like for the sorceress. Damage reduction increased from 13 to 15% for the Frostbite Glyph. Invocation damage reduction stacks increased from 12 to 15%. Stalagmite Glyph. Critical strike chance increased from 10 to 20%. Nice. Enchanter Glyph. Damage per 5 intelligence purchased in range increased from 1.3 to 2, maxing out at 10. Why? Why don't that cap immediately makes it ooh. Like, there's going to be other things that you can scale without a cap. I don't understand why they put these arbitrary caps on fun. Conjurer glyph damage per 5 intelligence purchase and range increased from 2.6 to 3%, maxing out 15. Like, sure. Unleash glyph damage and mana regeneration rather increased from 6.7 to 7%. Maybe. Legendary aspects of Searing Wards. Mana cost reduced from 100 to 200 to 75 to 125. Okay. That's potentially very good. Of Overwhelming Currents. Chance increased from 10 to 20 to 15 to 30. Sure. Rogue. Heartseeker. Forceful Arrow. They said they were going to increase these. And you can start a step with them now, which is cool. Flurry. Damage increased by 10%. Improved Flurry. If Flurry hits any vulnerable enemy, it will make all enemies hit by that cast vulnerable for 3 seconds. The new one. Flurry deals 20% multiplicative increased damage to vulnerable enemies. If Flurry hits any vulnerable enemy, it will make all enemies hit by the cast vulnerable for 3 seconds. Okay. That's a cool change. Vulnerable is still like a mandatory stat. Pretty much. It's not as strong as it used to be, but it's still pretty much mandatory, so... Without changing it further, this is a good way to buff Flurry, I feel like. Advanced Flurry. Previous. Evading through an enemy will cause your next Flurry to stun enemies for 2.5 seconds. Yeah, that was kind of shit. Evading through an enemy will cause your next Flurry to deal 30% increased damage and stun enemies for 2.5. Okay, yeah, I like that. I like that. It turns it into kind of like a backstabby gameplay. Where you're like, oh no, I need a buff, and you evade past them and then stabbing them back with Flurry. I like that. That sounds pretty cool. Can you use a bow with Flurry? Is it one of those ones that you can do both with? I can't remember. I don't think you can. I think it's melee only. Imagine if you could do that though, with some of the skills in Diablo 4, where it works differently depending on what weapon you're using. Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice? Indeed. Weapon bases that actually have more variety to them would be so much nicer, but you know, that means that the game would have to not be shallow. Rapid fire, damage increased by 10%. Rain of arrows, damage increased by 10%. That's going to be interesting, because I somewhat tested the Hakan amulet with, I think it was Wind Force, and I was doing like with unspec'd gear, like literally just equip the items to test out and then put Rain of Arrows on my hotbar. You can do insane damage with Rain of Arrows. Like it just builds up and you're easily doing millions of damage before, like I said, even specking into it properly just with those 2 items. Passives, precision, they lowered the stacks to 4%. Infusion glyph, cooldown reduction increased from 0.5 seconds to 1 second. Cool. Anything that reduces cooldowns is good in my book, especially for Diablo 4, because the cooldowns are just too long. Legendary aspects of Encircling Blades. Damage bonus increased from 5 to 15 to 15 to 22 with branching volleys. They already said this one. I think that's a good change. I already thought Barrage was actually quite strong. It was one of the first skills I used back in the beta, and it was just a really good shotgun, effectively. Shadow Slicer, even damage increased from 80 to 100% and base damage to 230. I can't remember what that one is, but that's a big buff. Unique items. Eagle Horn, damage bonus increased from 20 to 40 to 40 to 60. The problem with Eagle Horn is the way, I think they changed it for season 3. I can't quite remember, but the piercing arrow was shit. It was just, it didn't work the way that you thought it was going to work, and it was just this stupid extra arrow that maybe bounced off a wall, and you're like, oh, cool. I guess. So I don't think the damage bonus is that great. I think it should just turn your arrows into like piercing, bouncing arrows, and that would make it a lot more fun. Eyes in the Dark. Death Trap bonus damage increased from 30 to 50 to 50 to 70%. Rising Band of Trickery. Cooldown to summon a Shadow Decoy reduced from 12 to 10 seconds. Shadow Decoy damage increased by 20%. I do want to do a like shadow build one time, because there's gloves that you can get And I think there were a couple of other sources where you could just like spawn shadows and then they repeat your attack. Ironically, that's actually kind of what I'm doing with the Cold Flask build on in Last Epoch, which we'll be seeing shortly after we've done with these patch notes. The Xenashal Construct. Developers note, we want the Xenashal Construct to feel strong, but there are certain powers that are overperforming. Additionally, there are a couple of unintended interactions that are being addressed. Is it overperforming, chat? Like, do we think it's overperforming? Sound off in the comments if you think it was. I don't know if it is, because since they buffed it, I haven't played. I just remember everyone complaining that it was weak as shit and there was no point. And then they buffed it. And now they're nerfing it again, but I haven't heard people go, oh my god, it's now broken. Like, is it just good now? And these are probably going to make it bad again? Is that potentially how we're going to feel about it? Poison support. Poison support no longer reapplies the construct's damage bonuses when it spreads, matching the functionality of the other damage over time tuning stones. That sounds like a bug, so yeah, fair. Bonus bleeding damage from 20 to 10%. Again, I'm not sure if these nerfs are really required. Burning support, critical strike damage from 20 to 10. Bonus critical strike damage per skill rank from 2 to 1. Tempest no longer gains bonus damage and duration when it's reapplied or when it spreads. And that was supposed to be a bug, so fair. User interface and user experience. Player profile updates. Players' equipped skills are now displayed in their profile. Sure, cool. Equipped emblems are now displayed in the header of player profiles. Was they not before? Where were emblems displayed? I think people have forgotten that profiles even exist because whoop-de-doo, it's a fucking title kind of thing. And everyone just memes on it anyway. Like, I think my current title on my last character is like Trash Goat or something like that. The applied cosmetic name and where it was earned from are displayed in the tooltips of items that have been transmogged. Sure. That will be better when there's more items, which is probably indicative. Sorry, to finish my thought. If this will be cool when there are more cosmetics to earn in-game due to completing challenges. Like fun shit. I honestly think if they added cosmetics as prizes for the gauntlet, that would be so much more welcome than just a handful of loot once a week. When the loot isn't that great. It's not about the loot, but if you're going to have a participation trophy, make it something that everyone can actually be like, you know what? This was cool. And if you do like, what was it? Seal of the Bloody, you get like a somewhat basic bitch version of it. And then if you do Seal of the Worthy, it's got fucking stuff flying off it or whatever, lighting effects, particle effects, things like that. And then that way you can use it as like a show of prestige, not just in the leaderboard, but you can be like, look at me, look at my big dick armor that I got from like doing the gauntlet. And then that would incentivize the more casual Andes to give it a go, just to aspire for it. And that way they don't feel like they're being gimped on gear either. From edit profile, players can select seals from those they earned during the current week to display on their profile header and social card. Cool. I would probably expand on that though, because maybe you only do it 1 week, and then you want to like look, in week 1 I earned this one, or this was my favorite badge that I earned, or most fun badge, or whatever. The current character's time played is displayed at the bottom of the profile. That's cool. It's such a small, stupid thing, but I do like seeing how long I've played on my character, especially when I'm like leveling up. I want to be like, maybe look at it and compare it to other builds I've done. So maybe I've gotten 1 to 75 on the Sorceress with my teleport build, and I'm like, oh cool, I did it in 7 hours or whatever. And then on my Barb build, I did it in 8 hours. So I can compare them and be like, okay, this is effective, like how effective it was during leveling, things like that. Miscellaneous. The cost to craft Uber Uniques has been lowered from 5 to 4. Fair. Bug fixes. Fix an issue where the construct did... See, I didn't understand this. Fix an issue where the Xenashal gains double the benefit from skills that benefit allies, such as Barbarians, Warcry, or Druid. How? Like, how? Like, surely you're just marking them as an ally. I do wonder how they make their game to make these weird bugs sometimes. The way they, like, obviously the stash space thing is the most prevalent example of, like, weird design decisions they've made. Fix an issue where an attack that swaps from melee to crossbow would double the bonuses from precision and weapon mastery rogue passives. Fair. Fix an issue where some interactable objects associated with various quests, such as Linden's stash during the discretionary spending quest, could not be interacted with when mounted. Sure. Fix an issue where the camera would not reset if the player died during the echo of Lilith encounter while the camera was zoomed out. Fair. Fix an issue where the Juggernaut aspect didn't apply armor while the player was mounted. Fix an issue where the guaranteed overpower granted by the Druid's Enhanced Pulverize did not apply immediately after acquiring 12 stacks. That's definitely something you want to fix, especially if you're playing an overpower build. Fix an issue where the Necromancer Skeleton Reaper's chance to create a corpse was based on lucky hit instead of flat percentage. Lol. Fix an issue where bone splinters cast from the Shattered Spirit aspect didn't receive the vulnerable effect granted by Initiate's Bone Splinter. Fix an issue where Thorns was not consistent when applying lucky hit. Thorns could trigger abhorrent Decrepify but not Hewed Flesh. Fix an issue where the Cult Leader Legendary Paragon node didn't properly give bonus damage based on bonus minion attack speed. Fix an issue where the Rotting aspect wouldn't spawn additional corpses. Fix an issue where Sorcerer's Frigid Fate and Elemental Summoner Legendary Paragon effects did not work properly with the aspect of the elements. Fix an issue where the Fiery Surge passive was not granting as much mana regeneration as it should. Fix an issue where bonus damage from enhanced caltrops could apply more often than intended when stacking multiple casts of caltrops on the same enemy. So was the issue that it was stackable? Because that's probably the only time people use caltrops. And now we'll no longer use it. Fix an issue where enhanced caltrops was dealing less damage than expected to bosses. Some items, legendary aspects, passives, paragon bonuses, and skills displayed bugs that allowed players to gain more power than intended when you equip them, and then unequip them. We believe these interactions lead to worse experience for all players, as it creates a stigma that these bugs must be exploited to reach new levels of power. True. The bug fixes below address all known instances of this. Fix an issue with multiple legendary aspects where equipping duplicate aspects would always apply the effect of the first equipped aspect, ignoring the rule of applying only one strongest equipped aspect. Okay. I feel like I need an example to fully understand what they're saying there, but fair. Fix an issue where unlearning Veer's mastery with the Mage Lord's aspect equipped would cause the effect of Veer's mastery to remain active. Wow. Fix an issue where a power that grants a bonus stat based on another stat would not readjust after the temporary bonus wore off. That's horrific wording, but yes, I get it. Sure. User interface and user experience. Fix an issue where editing your profile could also trigger the prompt for adding a friend. Fix an issue where the description for enhanced caltrops was missing the damage cap. Alright. Miscellaneous. Fix an issue where Hadam, the quest giver NPC for Guardians of the Pit, would disappear while Helltide was active in the area. That would be annoying. Various performance, UI, visual, and stability improvements. Sure. It's a patch. It's a patch. Much like what I said with the Gauntlet, I don't think it's going to make players want to come back for the season. I think anyone who has discovered and actually played Last Epoch, I am aware there are Diablo 4 players that are vehemently bashing Last Epoch despite not playing it, just because they feel like they've been made jaded by all the dunking on that Diablo gets. But I think Last Epoch is going to eat away at the vast majority of people who may have potentially gone back for this patch. I think they've been won over by depth. And Diablo 4's core problems are still going to be there for seasons to come. In fact, I doubt that Diablo 4 will be fixed until the expansion, and at which point it's behind a paywall. Unless it's on Game Pass and you have cross-account functionality. If that's the case, get the expansion on Game Pass so you don't have to pay for it. Other than for Game Pass, of course. But yeah, that's going to be it for the notes. If you're watching this on YouTube and you want to see more of such content, more opinions, more reviews for Last Epoch coming up, I'm going to do a big Diablo 4 review probably after the next campfire chat or whatever when they discuss the Season 4 changes. It's going to be big, probably a good hour to 2 hours long, I suspect. So like, subscribe, etc. Tell your mother you love her. Buy yourself a pineapple. Do what you want with it afterwards, as long as you buy it. That's all you need to do. That's going to be it for me on YouTube. And now we're going to go play some Last Epoch.